Uh, okay, thinking about 30 seconds would be helpful. I'm going to see if there's a way I can grab my notes here. Seems like I can hear some chiming in, so maybe give it a minute and then. Okay, all right, I'm ready anytime you guys are. I think now is a good time to start. And I think, Maya, you said you wanted to go through the first couple slides, is that right?
Yeah, if you could advance to the next slide, I'd like to officially open our open house on the zoning code update meeting. This is our second public meeting, our first open house. And tonight we'll just be providing a brief overview of where we are today with the project and a preview of what's to come at the 6 o'clock Planning Commission meeting. Just a brief introduction. Myself, I'm Maya DeRosa, the Planning and Building Director for the City of St. Helena. I'm also the project manager for this project. I'd also like to introduce our consulting team who is assisting with the creation of our new zoning code document, Lisa Wise, and also Monica Slidlik, who is the project manager for this. We've been under contract with them since the beginning of this year, and we have a lot of work ahead of us still, don't we? But we're making really good progress, I feel. Please advance to the next slide. For our viewers today, I just want to provide a brief overview of what to expect. We'll have a brief presentation by the consultant that should go about 20 minutes, and then we'll reserve the rest of the time slot till 5:30. We have a pretty hard stop to get ready for our next meeting, but we'd love to entertain any questions and answers that you have about the project and the process. Since this is conducted 100% virtually via Zoom, the participation rules are, not what you normally would expect in public meetings. So we would appreciate it if you wait till the presentation's over to ask questions. And you, using Zoom, there's two ways you can notify us you'd like to speak. You can use your raise hand feature icon in Zoom, or if you're participating by phone, it's *9. And as we receive those, we will go through those questions one by one. So I hope this helps provide a little background of what to expect today, and won't waste any other time, and we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Sidlick, and I'm a senior associate with Lisa Wise Consulting, and I'm managing this citywide code update for your city. So as you know, the city adopted a new general plan last year, which the city worked over time to ensure that it translated the community's vision into policy. And after a general plan is updated, it is an obligation and also opportunity to update the citywide zoning code to ensure that the policies of the general plan can be successfully implemented by defining the rules and regulations for new development. We like to think of a code as a way to promote a common understanding of what it is to be a good neighbor. And we determine that over time through outreach with the community. So updating the code is intended to make it more user-friendly, flexible. It's an opportunity to update and modernize the code in general, not just to reflect the general plan, but also so that the standards reflect contemporary practices. So down at the bottom of the screen, you see a general project schedule. We began last December by kicking off the project. We held stakeholder interviews. And then you can see the sequence of green diamonds and pink circles are sort of the major milestones where we develop the content of the new code. So in June, we developed a recommendations memo and an outline of how we envision the code taking form. And that's what we are here to answer questions about in this open house session. Over the next few months, we'll develop the content of major portions of the code, culminating in the release of a public review draft in April. The code will go before the council and the commission for a series of hearings, hoping to adopt the final code next fall. So a general overview of what zoning codes do and what they don't do, which is to say what other parts of the city's municipal code or other programs that the city administers can dictate. So zoning specifies which uses are allowed where, on what parcels, where the districts are, the different zoning districts. It establishes development form and standards. So this is height, massing, setbacks, landscaping. Performance issues means how one use impacts its neighbors. And generally speaking, it offers predictability to neighbors, to residents, to developers. Zoning does not dictate architectural style or regulate the free market. We cannot predict what will happen on a given parcel, only what the parameters of what it can look like when it does, and the uses. It doesn't establish land use policy. That's what's in the general plan. So the document that we'll be describing tonight and summarizing and discussing at the Planning Commission meeting this evening is organized into sections of recommendations, sort of categories of recommendations. So I'll provide a brief summary of each of those categories of recommendations here. And then we can discuss, following this short presentation, we can discuss any one of these or any of the recommendations that we describe. First is the code organization and usability. So right now, the code is essentially a collection of chapters, and the order and organization doesn't necessarily reflect the frequency with which you would reference them or the order of information that you would seek. So the new code will sort of organize all of the information into chunks, into divisions. It will present concepts in a logical sequence. It takes out redundancies, outdated sections, language that nobody references or has need for. We'll try to slim down the code by using cross-references and tables to collapse information as needed. We'll illustrate the code. Right now, your code doesn't include very many illustrations, and that can help slim a code down. We'll also consolidate all of the definitions and rules of measurement to make it easier to use in general. So the next chunk of recommendations are related to zoning districts. So this has a lot to do with the newly updated general plan. So generally speaking, we will try to align the zoning districts with the new general plan land uses, so that as much as possible, the land uses are sort of one-to-one with the zoning code. Right now, you can see that, for example, medium density residential is implemented by 3 different zoning districts: low density residential, medium density, and high density, which which sort of detracts from predictability and sort of makes it harder for the code to express a particular intent for a land use when it is implemented through various zoning districts. So we'll try to minimize that to the extent possible. We'll also streamline the overlay districts. Right now, there are overlay districts that are applied to particular parcels or are not mapped on the zoning map. So we'll try to make that as logical and concise as possible. Use regulations. So a major part of what we'll be revisiting is the list of uses that are permitted or permitted with conditions, conditionally permitted uses in each zoning district. We'll adopt a use classification system. We'll get rid of outdated zoning districts that nobody uses. We'll make sure that each is flexible enough to permit contemporary uses and uses that weren't around when the code was last drafted. We'll present the uses in tables, so it will be easy to compare the set of uses that are allowed or conditionally permitted in one zone versus another. So you see in this graphic on this slide, we have an example where different zoning districts are lined up along the top row, and grouped uses are along the left-hand column. So it's easy to compare what's permitted and where. So in each zoning district chapter, a single use table will show permitted uses by use category, which is to say there will be a table for all of the residential zones, a table for all of the commercial zones. The next category of recommendations involves administrative procedures, the review and approval processes. So in general, we'll try to make this easier and sort of devise, locate the processes along, you can see this gradient here on this slide where sort of the easiest to get through is on the left, and the most difficult, requiring the most the highest level of review along the right, based on complexity of projects. So this section of the code will first define all of the review bodies, the administrative authorities, clarify all the procedures. So that means the findings, the noticing, timing, make sure that it's all of those provisions are very clear. And then we propose to introduce a minor use permit. And the idea is to simplify and reduce reliance on discretionary review. The next is development standards. So these apply to base zones, as well. Well, there are development standards throughout the code. So the code will provide clear, objective form and design standards that describe the overall envelope that's permitted. One of the goals of the code update is to support a range of housing types that are described in the general plan. So we'll make sure that the development standards describe form that is flexible enough to support townhouses, cottage court, accessory dwelling units, various sort of types of multifamily housing, vertical mixed use. And the development standards will be shown will be illustrated in section and in plan, as you can see here at the top of the slide. We'll consolidate.
Excuse me, Monica.
Uh-huh.
I think there might be, I'm not sure if you're able to see the screen, but the slides are not advancing, at least on what we're seeing for Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
Right now we're looking at the slide that says recommendation. Well, it just advanced to the map.
Thank you. Yes, I have two screens going and I was advancing one and not the other. So let me back up a little bit. So going back to streamlining zoning districts and overlay zones so that they are closer to one-to-one with the general plan, the new general plan. The use classifications, use tables. I referenced the use table here with the uses along the top row and the grouped uses along the left column. Here's the review and approval. Gradient image I mentioned, where we have, say, a business license is very easy on the left to something that requires discretionary review on the right. And now let's go forward to development standards. All right, that's the danger of working with two screens at once here. All right. Tailoring development standards to reflect differences in areas so that the standards reflect the existing character of, say, a corridor, the downtown, a particular neighborhood. So here you can see the standards will reflect the different kinds of development types and different form and character that we envision in different areas of the city. So next, we can go through briefly the overall code organization. So at the beginning of the presentation, we talked about organizing the code based on content. So part one is rather slim, sort of establish the authority of the zoning code. Part two includes all of the chapters having to do with administration and procedures. This includes establishing review authorities, design review. So common procedures includes the noticing, design review, minor use permit. So these are generally organized in order of the order in which you'd have to reference them as you proceed through the entitlement process. Part three establishes the district regulations. So the first chapter establishes the zones, and then the regulations by category. First, agricultural zones, residential, commercial and mixed use, and on. Overlay districts is a separate chapter within this part, followed by specific plan districts. Citywide standards are all development standards that are not specific to a particular zone, so that apply to all or many zones. General site standards includes landscaping, maybe encroachments, screening, parking, and access, loading. Signs is its own chapter. Performance standards includes provisions. We mentioned at the beginning of this presentation the impacts that one use might have on its neighbors. Standards specific to uses might be specific standards that for example, that are unique to adaptive reuse or to bed and breakfast inns, to home occupations, to other uses that aren't specific to one zoning district, but rather may appear throughout the city. And all standards and provisions related to affordable housing. And finally, all definitions and rules of measurement. So that is our 20-minute presentation, and we would like to invite all participants to submit questions or and we would like to answer any questions or engage in any dialogue about any of these topics.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, you can raise your hand using the hand icon on Zoom, and we will, our technical host will allow you to speak. And it looks like we have one. And so, Ms. Nixon, are you helping with that today?
Yes, I am. So let me unmute this person. Hold on one second. Okay, you should be able to speak. Please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Priya. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Matthew Heil, 605 Pope Street. And thank you, Monica, very much for the presentation. Really interested in this topic, of course, and been following your guys' progress. I'm excited to hear that it hasn't been sidetracked with, frankly, hellfire and damnation that we've all been experiencing this year to date. Also, grateful to see that the timeline is still continuing apace. I did have one quick question as regards specific municipal code amendments, and that is, will there be any kind of, I did see on the Planning Commission agenda that was canceled last week due to the special meeting due to the power outages, that there was going to be an amendment to the municipal code with regards to the restaurant cap and with regards to the hotel cap numbers that are in place from the 93 general plan. Is there going to be any more piecemeal anticipated? Maybe it's a question best for Maya, but maybe for anybody in the group with regards to amending the current municipal code before the entire overhaul goes into place? I think that's just more or less my question. Thanks very much.
Sure. I'll be happy to answer that. That code amendment was triggered in particular by the farmstead entitlement proposal, because as you may be familiar, that involves a request for new hotel rooms. Right. And under the way the zoning code would have been too restrictive. And actually this is, a general plan cleanup implementation item that, it was ripe to do the moment the general plan was adopted, but now we actually have a real project knocking on the door needing that in order to make everything line up. So in terms of the bigger picture, do we anticipate any more cleanups coming? It's maybe too soon to say for sure. We just updated our ADU ordinance, so that's done. And this one is just necessary in order to make the project align with the general plan and zoning. I don't have any other particular ones that are specifically on my short-term horizon.
Great, Maya. Thank you so much. Great answer.
Is there anybody else from the public that would like to make a comment or ask a question? And of course, as we mentioned earlier, there will be the 6 o'clock meeting of the Planning Commission, which will go through this presentation in even more detail. And so you're all welcome to follow us there when this meeting ends and sign on as participants in that 6 o'clock meeting. But this is a little bit more intimate, if a smaller group. So we wanted to make this opportunity available to you. I see Matthew's raised his hand.
I don't know if I'm the only one on the line or if there's others. Because there's a little bit extra time here, or if there is anybody else that's in the queue, I hope they would chime in. But in the spirit of kind of an open forum or open house, I was just curious about, there are some kind of dangling zoning questions. And I suppose I could say I'm speaking on behalf of the Montessori school here with the rezone of those 3 parcels that sit out front of the school. What's the status of those, if you can comment on those, Maya, and the other parcels around town that were, put on hold by the council until general plan adoption? And then, are those going to move forward in the queue ahead of the zoning ordinance rewrite, or is it concurrent? I was told by a member of council that it would happen after the zoning code rewrite, but I didn't know that there was a necessary dependency upon the code overhaul in order for those lots to be addressed?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, our first priority is we want to make sure that we follow through with the general plan implementation to change the zoning of any properties that had general plan amendments as a result of the general plan adoption. So we have those in alignment. So that's the first priority. The next is, we're certainly welcome to receive comments from the public about properties they'd like to see rezoned. What adds a little more layer of challenges if that property is if by rezoning it, it makes it inconsistent with the general plan, then those are more complex entitlements that probably make sense to do it outside of this particular project, but we can still, and I know that we have talked about those projects in particular at the Montessori school, and they're in my book of, future zoning actions. So in terms of, if there's a zoning request that doesn't require a general plan amendment, I think those definitely would be something that we could look at to see if it makes sense to bring it concurrently as a second item with the text amendment. So I would be happy to talk with you more offline about that, Matthew, and some of the more specifics. I need to dust off the particulars because it's been a while since we talked. Does that sound like a good next step?
Yeah, it certainly does. And I know, given the scale of kind of what's going on in town with both the natural disasters, the fires, et cetera, I don't think the school or myself or anybody is kind of trying to push this onto the top burner. There's so many things on the council's plate and on staff's plate. I think that the main thing really is just understanding kind of how sequentially these things will line up, and we can definitely talk about that offline. I think I'm one of many citizens who's very eager to see the zoning ordinance rewrite and this whole process come to a head. So anything that detracts from that, we wouldn't want, staff and or the consultants to have, sidetrack the resources. We would want to see kind of the most important thing, the comprehensive rewrite, move forward with all speed. So I guess that's all I have. Thank you so much, Maya.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to ask a question or make a comment regarding our zoning code update? And just so you know, we're going to be having a series of other open houses beyond the one tonight. We're still relatively early in the process. We did have a schedule attached to that we shared and also attached to the staff report that shows what our anticipated time frame is to continually have outreach to the public and get feedback on what your thoughts are with our preliminary recommendations. So this is a very collaborative process. And additionally, if there's something that you think of post this open house or post the Planning Commission meeting tonight, you're always welcome to send an email to me of what your question or comment is. And I'll verbally give my email address if anybody wants to write it down and does not have it. It's mderosa@cityofsthelena.org, and it's ST with no period. So that's my contact information, and I will be your lead person that you'll stay in contact with about status on the project. We also do have a zoning code website established. So any products related to this project that we produce, starting with our stakeholders input memo and with the document today, the recommendations memo, along the way, all those documents are posted on our website. And again, my contact information is on there as well.
Right, and this is Monica. I don't think the presentation is showing anymore, but remember if some of the earlier slides addressed district regulations and development standards. As we go forward to draft the code, those will be the sections we're tackling first. So if there are any particular topics, elements, design, concepts that you're thinking about or would like to remind us to address, now is a great time, as well as future outreach events.
We'll give it another minute in case anybody has any thoughts before we wrap up.
And if you'd like to project this screen again, I suppose we can do that and then show a few of the slides.
Monica, do you want me to project the screen and then you just tell me what slide to go to?
Sure. I'm trying to figure out if I can
Okay.
do it again. Oh, wait a minute.
Just let me know.
Okay. Perhaps a development standard slide. I think it's right about in the
Okay.
middle. That might be a good one.
Hold on one second. Let me pull that up. Okay. So you said the development slide.
Development standards. I think it's slide.
This one right here. Can you see it?
Yeah, that's a good one to
Okay, perfect.
on.
Okay, we'll have a last call, just an intermediate last call. And I hope you, if there are no other questions or discussion for the open house, I hope you all follow us over to the next meeting link for the 6 o'clock Planning Commission meeting. I also would like to thank my technical team host, in particular, Ms. Nixon, and thank you, Lisa Weiss consulting team, for your continued work, and a lot more to do.
Absolutely. We could put up the schedule again, I guess, real quickly. Just the last slide.
Would you like to talk about it, Lisa?
Sure. I think even down below, I think it's the very last slide, or maybe 15 out of 17. Yeah, there. Yeah, so as Maya said, we kicked off the project late last year, early this year, and we did have a series of stakeholder interviews early in the year, where we got a lot of good information from that. And then in June, we released the recommendations memo, and that's really where we are on the project. So still really the discovery phase and understanding what's going on. The recommendations report, we sometimes call a code audit, where we really sort of dig into things. You get an understanding of the regulations and what's in them, and best practices and what might be working and not working. And then we'll release the public review draft code in April. But between now and then, as Monica said, there'll be a series of meetings and workshops to dig into particular topics. The next scheduled one is November, where we'll go through the zones, the overlays, the use tables, definitions. So that'll be sort of the next big focus, and there'll be an admin draft of that release prior to that meeting. And then we'll go and we'll do other parts of the code, like the procedures and the citywide standards, which Monica talked about too. That's parking, signs, affordable housing, those kind of topics. So we've been working about 6 months, but we really are kind of in the early stages. And the next stage, the next 6-8 months, is really drafting the parts of the code. We'll come back out to you folks in the community, and hopefully people on the line will still participate and stay involved in the process. And as we dig into those topics, get a better understanding of what's not working and what the community is really looking for, and some of those areas of code, we can have bigger discussions on those topics. So that's the schedule, kind of overall where we are and next steps. And yeah, we hope to be done in fall of next year. October is the October timeframe. So as Maya said, a lot of work to do, but good work. It'll be good. It's good work. Thanks, Maya.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody who attended the meeting tonight and this afternoon, and we'll reconvene at 6 o'clock at the Planning Commission special meeting. And thank you. We'll sign off for now.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.